Ladies and gentlemen, friends all, thank you for inviting me to speak at this year's LIVEXchange. This conference comes at a profoundly challenging time. At a time when the world was still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has dragged down global growth and driven up inflation around the world, causing higher prices for energy and food and lower energy and food security in many parts of the world. Central banks in Australia and elsewhere have tightened monetary policy quite sharply in an attempt to get inflation under control. The global energy crisis has intensified economic uncertainty for businesses and households. And the scars from COVID-19 continue to linger, including impacts on food supply chains and food security. It is estimated that 193 million people experienced acute food insecurity in 2021, which is an increase of nearly 40 million people compared with already record numbers in 2020. Even though food prices have declined from their recent peaks, they're still about 30% higher than they were before the pandemic. When combined with recent extreme weather events, including severe droughts in Europe, China and North America, this raises acute concerns about food security in some parts of the world. This pretty somber backdrop underlines a simple point. There has never been a more important time for the Australian agricultural sector to maintain a global outlook. Of course, I know that this has been a hallmark of Australia's livestock industry. Your industry depends on open trade, on global rules, and on stable cooperative relations between nations, principles and values which the OECD is strongly committed to advance. In turn, your industry contributes to global food security, helping to feed the world's hungry and to improve nutrition. The Australian livestock industry has an important role to play as a global leader in producing high-quality meat with high standards of animal welfare and environmental sustainability. A major supplier to global markets, your industry supports livelihoods all along the food supply chain, not only within Australia, but also beyond, including an estimated 12,000 jobs in Indonesia. Your conference agenda highlights the very complex landscape we currently face in seeking to address sustainability and long-term resilience in the livestock and food sector. At the OECD, we are focused on this daunting triple challenge facing the production and consumption of food globally. We need to provide sufficient, safe and nutritious food to a world population that is expected to approach 10 billion people by 2050. We need to support livelihoods along the food supply chain, including for more than 600 million farmers and graziers worldwide. And we need to do so sustainably by using essentially the same amount of land and less water while adapting to climate change and contributing to lower greenhouse gas emissions. This necessarily involves trade-offs and hard choices. To get a sense of the scale of this triple challenge, our agriculture experts here at the OECD worked with their counterparts at the Food and Agriculture Organization to better understand what a sustainable path for the global food system would look like. The team explored the level of sustainable productivity growth which would be required to meet the UN's zero hunger goal while keeping agricultural emissions on track to reach climate targets. And that study found that average global agricultural productivity needs to increase by 28% over the next decade. For cropping, that's more than double the increase achieved over the past decade. For animal-based food production, productivity needs to increase 31% in the next decade compared to a zero increase in the past decade. That's pretty daunting. But we also know that food systems have overcome enormous challenges before. Despite the world's population more than doubling since 1960, from 3 billion people then to 7.5 billion today, the global availability of food per person has actually increased. In fact, global agricultural production tripled over that period. If we are to come to grips with the triple challenge facing our food system, we need far-reaching policy reforms. We need governments and industry working together across a wide range of areas, strengthening foundations and creating connections, as your conference theme puts it nicely. Australia's science-based and industry-led approach, with a strong emphasis on market openness, building resilience and investment in R&D and biosecurity, provides an important model. We need policies and market signals that drive innovation, infrastructure development and skills training, which in turn support sustainable productivity growth. Keeping markets open is of course critical. More than 20% of calories consumed globally cross at least one international border. So trade is key for meeting the global zero hunger goal. To combat rising prices, we need to avoid export bans and protectionism to underpin supply and ensure global food shortages are prevented. We saw this when the African swine fever outbreak hit China. Australia's livestock exports played an important role in addressing the resulting shortages. Yet agriculture in many countries remains subject to high tariffs, to quotas, and to a growing range of non-tariff measures. OECD analysis of 54 countries shows that $817 billion US in subsidies and other support was provided by governments to the agricultural sector between 2019 and 2021. In many cases, those policies distort trade without providing effective solutions to the challenges of improving food security and nutrition, livelihoods, and environmental sustainability. A better way would see policymakers phase out price interventions and market and trade distorting producer subsidies and other support. It would target income support to farm households most in need, and it would reorient public expenditures towards investments in innovation, systems that benefit producers, consumers, and society overall, and would invest in data, tools, and skills to strengthen the resilience of the sector in the face of increasingly diverse risks, including extreme weather events. We also need to tackle the climate challenge in a way that allows opportunities for the agricultural sector and in a way that does not undermine global food security. Accounting for 13% of Australia's greenhouse gas emissions, the agricultural sector will be important to help achieve the economy-wide net zero emissions target by 2050. Australia's red meat industry has set an ambitious target to be carbon neutral by 2030 through a mix of cutting emissions and carbon storage. Again, to achieve these goals, we need cooperation between government and industry to get the policy settings right. We need to support innovation. We need to share information on improved farm management practices. We need to encourage research and development for new crop varieties and breeds. And we need to exploit the possibilities for digitalization to support sustainable farming. Through sound, targeted policies developed in partnership with industry, we can address the challenge of climate change while allowing our agricultural industries to continue to thrive and compete successfully globally. At the OECD, we will continue to work in partnership with Australia and other countries to get those policy settings right, to make them work better for you and for global food systems that deliver for people everywhere, every day. Our OECD agriculture ministers met just last week to discuss these very issues. I applaud the efforts of your industry, and I look forward to you continuing to play a leadership role to enhance global food security and to do so sustainably. Thank you.